Those things are happening, in case you're wondering. Okay, so I'll get rid of the. Those things are happening, in case you're. Okay, I got rid of that. I did good. Now I'm going to go back to Zoom. Oh, and I pushed the wrong button. Okay. Okay, hold on. Okay. Let me get set up to go back to Zoom. Okay, we're live on live stream Zoom, and what we're talking about here is how to do collaboration amongst a bunch of people from different countries even, and different disciplines. And we're doing this collaboration, a novel about what's called superorganisms, which is Gaia. The planet is a superorganism. Superorganism, my tooth. If I put my finger in my mouth, there's about 1 trillion superorganisms into my finger here. You know, superorganisms are on the soil, the water, the air. They're all over the place. But some of them are not doing so well in pollution and, things that are happening in the planet. So we're doing a sci-fi project. Now, why are we doing this? Well, because I wanted to do it, and I enrolled all my friends to get involved. But the other thing is because people really need to know about some of the scientific developments that are happening in the world, and they're ubiquitous, and nobody really knows about it other than Lynn Margulies and Myra J. Hurd, who was our guest at the Quantum Storytelling Conference and came in and talked to us on her birthday, and she wrote a wonderful book about these superorganisms. So what we're doing is exploring different superorganisms in different parts of the world and having adventures. And why are we doing that? Because my grandchildren might read the book. My children might read the first book in my life where it's not so full of academic ease, these large $50 words that nobody can understand or appreciate. And, most of my books, I guess there's 30 of them and a dozen encyclopedia volumes that my grandkids can't read. And I remember my father-in-law saying, I look through your book, David, it makes no sense at all. I say, well, thank you, Phil. I appreciate that feedback, But I thought, can't academics and practitioners and artists do something together that the general public could get a inkling? Isn't that what Jules Verne did for the submarines and other kinds of innovations? And can't we do the same thing? Yes, we can. And so I'm going to show you the book now, if that's cool with you, hopefully. All right. Now, this is a preliminary project, meaning that we will change the title. We will change the cover. Sabine, a wonderful artist, will probably draw something amazing to replace this AI-generated thing. But I'm a visual learner, okay? I like to have visuals. It helps me. Now, what are we doing? Well, we have assembled what are superorganisms, the natural ones, the microbes. Those are like the things you can't see in the microscope. They're so small. The social superorganisms like bees, ants, right? All kinds of root systems for the aspen trees. Urban superorganisms, like in a waste dump, in the gutter, in the street, that are crawling with all kinds of superorganisms we don't want to think about maybe. And then what are the political economic superorganisms? Can humans be a superorganism? Can we as writers be a superorganisms of diverse writers and artists that are coming together to say something about this topic? So now the chapters, we started off with the Symphony of Waste, which was about my dad, who's the inventor of the trash compactor for industry and apartment buildings rather. And man, he had this invention. He had an idea. He would solve the waste landfill problem by compressing it down to 60% less waste. I mean, you can imagine what that would do. Of course, after his invention and he sold the rights to it, you think corporations did anything like that with his invention? Hell no! They didn't do they didn't fulfill his dream as an entrepreneur. But Myra J. Hurd did a wonderful presentation at our annual conference on waste, landfills, and how polluted they are, and the superorganisms that inhabit there, and what human pollution is doing to the planet. Then we look at soundscapes. One of our authors, not here today, she's taking a break, is Jerry McCullough, and she writes about soundscapes in her dissertation, and is fabulous. And it's about the sounds we don't hear because we're not microbes, or we're composed of 37.2 living cells. Those are microbes. So yeah, a lot of them. But can we hear a microbe speak? And thus the title, what if we could hear superorganisms speak? And that's a tentative title and will probably disappear today. But that's what are superorganisms? How are they doing around the world? Chapter 3. The team takes a journey to Southeast Asia, and I incorporated Paul's revisions in that. Thank you, Paul. About what's the science say about superorganisms, but making it fun, an adventure, traveling, getting off the plane, going to visit them. 5, we've got global emergency summits happening, press releases, reporters talking at the UN. The implantation decision. This is more about AI, where one of the fantasy characters, Vita, got an implant. But I don't know if you know, but there's actually 5 or 6 different corporations in the world doing implants now, and you could volunteer. This is real. This is not science fiction. You could volunteer to have an implant, and it's beneath the scalp here. You don't even see it, and you can move your mouse. You can communicate with different apps. It's very primitive at this stage, but imagine in 10 years when you'll be able to communicate with your AI intelligence, what's called now the AI agents, with an AI agents. And these AI agents are in entrepreneurship, as Duncan and Ronnie study, will be laborers in the workforce and maybe taking away a lot of jobs, maybe doing work better. And we have to figure out how AI can work intelligently, and we need to make better decisions. We're all part of what's called the Quantum Storytelling Lab, and that's about it. I'll open it up for discussion. I can come back to the book, to various illustrations as we proceed. So my job is done. I've introduced, now I will listen. This is where you all speak.
Okay, I have a question from the point of view of someone who's not real. I don't have much experience with science fiction. So, what percent? I love the chapter titles. I want to know more about all of them. They get our curiosity going. But what percent of it is real and what percent of it is science fiction?
It varies with the collaborators would be responsible. Let everybody respond. It's trying to be scientific, like a Jules Verne novel would be scientific, the available science and predictions of the near
Got it.
future. But we can't
Okay.
see, like if we're in a fog, a heavy fog, we can see 5 feet in front of our vehicle. We can't see 30 feet. We can't see 100 feet. We can sort of
Got it.
see what's right there. But science fiction tries to say, well, the future could evolve this way with AI. It could evolve this way with either people ignoring the pollution impact on superorganisms, ignoring Gaia as the superorganisms, or they could say, hey, we really got to look at Myra J. Hurd and Lynn Margulies and some of the other scientists today and see what they're doing. So it could pique interest. So, but
Okay.
in a novel, you want to have a story arc. You want to have like twists and turns. You want to have blocks, the hero's journey, the blocks. You can't get through it. You want to then at the end say, oh, look at this alternative. It could be really good. So like that. I
Okay.
don't know if that answers your question, but it's basically Bakhtin. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all
Well,
about Bakhtin.
yeah, he's telling me it's Bakhtin, so I'll get all the way into it. Yeah. No, what I like about your answer is I don't have to be an expert myself, but I need to get a basis, not just invent off the top of my head. I needed that, oddly enough. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And as my dad always said, and you guys are going to hate this response, he said, David, if you don't know, make it up. You know?
I'll throw that back at you, David.
I'll bet you. Next, Sabine.
I had several comments about this, and one of them is I really love the explanations of the different kinds of superorganisms that you put at the beginning. That is really nice, and that actually helped me a lot. I felt that I learned a lot. But something that I would like to throw out here is that, and I know it's in the nature of what you're trying to do, but I think perhaps a few more glimmers of humor, or, like it seems, to my thought was to perhaps intersperse more moments. I think you have one of them, and that was a journalist, a little moment of humor, which I think is great. But I think intersperse moments of humor and also moments of warmth and compassion. Like a character, picking up a dog that is running around the landfill and, oh my gosh, I'm going to adopt you. Or, I feel a little warmth is missing here.
Beautiful comment, and easily we can do that because Duncan here, I know he loves animals and he's a warmth and caring person. And so as his character comes in and visits the landfill and sees these dogs rummaging through the trash, in other words, we can redo a chapter in a matter of minutes with that kind of perspective and then get a new draft out. It's like, Ronnie, you probably want to explain why this is so darn easy to do, Anyway,
but, I felt that
so Duncan, I nominate Duncan for this role. Yeah.
Like the voice of just warmth and kindness. It's like, wait a minute, it's something that's loving and bright. So it seems, a lot of these things seem so harsh and cruel, and they are, but but I'd like to see, like, oh my gosh, there's a candle burning in this window.
Oh, sure. Well, watch some science fiction movies, and you're going to be aghast because 90% of them are just, zombies running around eating people with chainsaws and trying to attack spaceships, and aliens doing operations on people. They don't have a clue what real science fiction is about, and I think what you're talking about is that kind of authentic emotionality. In each of the skits I've worked on, I say I want each character to have emotional authenticity, which is a Bakhtinian notion, by the way, right? Betty knows the Bakhtin word for this, this kind of emotional authenticity, which he called answerability, but he also wrote about this kind of emotiveness, and a word I can't quite remember, but Betty knows all. Anyway, but we can do that. We can do that. That would make it better.
It helps engage the reader a bit more, when you have like a human touch in there like that.
You remember, Sabine, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T. E.T. was this,
right.
We were used to, people who were into science fiction, years of monsters, weird creatures, usually hostile to human beings. And so in E.T., all of a sudden we have this alien being who looks funny and, vaguely humanoid. But he's a little kid who has been left behind somehow. And E.T., Phone Home. It turned the science fiction shtick, that domain of creativity, into something that I saw and felt as novel. And that is, we can have strange creatures from a different part of the universe who are in our present suddenly. And they are almost always in so much science fiction period that if it was strange, it was deadly. War of the Worlds. Oh, here come those people. They're out to destroy us and take our goodies. And we have to resist the alien invading force. And E.T. was utterly different from that. And the scene where the kid goes bicycling off into the sky, it was exactly, I'm not saying exactly what you were touching on, Sabine, in the importance of warmth and compassion somehow as we go through this story. And the weirdness is great, but something about familiarity, home, E.T. phone home. It was like the whole point of that movie was home matters to so many of us. The place that I came from. I want to go back there. And so the whole movie was like the little boy helping the alien boy get back home. And so your point, I think, is very important, Sabine. I don't know how to do it. David says piece of cake. Have at it, David.
I got the recording. I know exactly what to put in and ask for, and it's not that difficult.
Well, I also feel it's about hope, you know, I mean, we have a choice, right? And, you know, each of us can be, you know, the person we want to be, right? Rather than putting it all on everybody else. I mean, we can be the compassionate ones. We can be the loving ones, you know, I mean, just to show that possibility is open.
It's the whole point.
Right. Right.
I'm going to be useless to the rest of the world if I don't feel or have inside of me, like bubbling, like oozing out hope. I
think hope comes later after the obstacles.
A friend called me up this morning and said, "Oh, we need to talk." And he was just shot down. This is a guy who's really bright, an entrepreneur of the first kind, ran all kinds of businesses. He is really miserable, and he's not emotional, he's not sentimental. He's so depressed about the election, the inauguration, the unfolding dreck, you know, that we know that we're going to get. And it's vital that hope somehow keep coming out.
It's exactly on the mark as to why I thought it important to do a project like this, is to have hope in a time when a lot of things are going to be happening. No more electric car discounts, no more solar power discounts, no more drill, baby, drill. You know, well, that's all fine, but I like my dad's vision. Let's do something about landfills. I like Myra J. Hurd's vision. Let's respect the superorganisms and Gaia. How can we make that message of hope happen and communicate it with a lot of people that have a different point of view than we do? You know, and I think it's through storytelling. I think it's through you get them into an adventure. This is called a game book, by the way. I don't know if you know what a game book is. You know, it needs to be more play by academics and artists. A game book, you read the book, and at the end of the chapter, it says, "Okay, reader, would you like to see superorganisms swallow a human being? Or would you like to see superorganisms being treated respectfully? Or would you like to take a trip down in the deep sea dive in one of the oceans to see microbes eating methane? You know, what do you want to do, reader?" And so it puts the reader in the point of view of making a decision, a choice. But that means we need, if a lot of people are choosing superorganisms are going to make humans extinct, well, that needs to come up in the book, you know, as what are we going to do with that choice? You know what I mean? Or are we going to limit their choices? So I don't know. Do you know what have you ever seen game books? Okay.
When my son
You read a chapter and it says, "Okay, Paul, what are you going to do now?" Here's of three futures. Choose one. You're responsible for that future now.
And it
What do
puts
you
them
do?
all into the court of the reader. And the maximizing of choices. When I saw, and I read them all very carefully, that, okay, here we are at the end of chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here are 3 ways to go. The 3 ways to go. This is something that I got in my head from somebody named Gordon Pask. The best thing that you can do as a human being is to maximize choice. At the end of whatever you're doing, you
Okay.
make sure that there are more choices than there were before you showed up, instead of
Good.
and
Oh, absolutely. My earlier novel, I tried to create a map of all the choices from all the chapters, and I'm thinking, well, how is this going to go there? And I'm missing a chapter there. And finally, I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to create kind of a river effect of the general direction of the story arc. And I'll go back and I'll say, okay, if you chose this option in chapter 2, go back to square one. If you chose this option, you get to skip a chapter and you get to read ahead. If you chose this middle of the road option, read the next chapter. So it kind of works like that. But you got to have in mind that kind of flow that's happening. You don't have to have it in mind. You can just be random, I guess. You know?
you invent a flow. Okay.
Yeah, we're inventing a flow, and the flow is kind of there, and then we might decide, you know what, this chapter, it don't belong here in the flow. We're going to have to move it earlier. We're going to have to move it later. We're going to have to drop it. You know what I mean?
And
So
that's
that'll happen all the way through.
true storytelling, making room for the stories that are there. That one,
Absolutely.
all of those principles keeps ringing in my head.
Yeah, me too. So I helped write the book.
Talk about your dad and the trash compactor. Oh, this is a story that I
Yeah,
did.
because I think it personalizes it for the reader that we think these things really happened. These things are not fiction, but then all of a sudden there's another character that is fiction. But what do you think, Duncan? Are you ready to take on being the ambassador for the little animals in the waste dump or whatever?
Yeah, it's a lot to wrap my head around, but my mind is working, so that's a good thing. Maybe it's not the animals around the waste dump that matter, it's the little microorganisms in the waste dump that matter. I don't know.
Nobody has made a hero out of a microbe. We have ants. Remember the movie about ants?
Yeah.
The
I
ants are
remember.
heroes, and other crazy people have become, maybe in cartoon films.
Oh yeah, Ant-Man.
heroes. But microbes have never been the hero, to my knowledge, of a science fiction. You know, the mitochondria that saved the world. It's very quantum. You know, how can a little thing have any kind of effect on this huge?
Sure. Sabine's got the talking stick up, so you want to go, Sabine?
Yes, thank you. I think though it also helps, you know, with these types of things when it is, I think, Paul, you have a good point here. You know, I think for people to have something, you know, visual, like, you know, a visual thing to grab onto, you know, like, oh, you know, you're picking up a dog, you know, everybody can visualize that. You know, how do you do that? I think, Paul, you're right. How do you do that with a microbe? You know, I mean, and I think there's an emotional response to certain things that we just have, a little dog, a small child, or something like that, right? That's hard to bring across with a microbe. I think, Paul, you have a really good point there. You know, how do you do that? Oh, I'm going to hug a microbe today. Oh, okay. You know, how do you?
You know, Sky has a really good point, and I'm going to switch you on, Sky. You tell us what you wrote in the chat here.
That microbes or bacteria were the heroes in War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells, because they killed the aliens who were our enemies, but we are immune to those bacteria. So, yeah.
I loved that movie as a kid. I love, all of the special effects and everything, and the original and the rewrite of it with Tom Cruise, I guess. And it had the freaky creature, but you're right. The idea was already there.
And Ronnie, you had something to add, I think. We're not hearing you, but Ronnie wrote about Osmosis Jones, another movie.
So in Independence Day, they kill the aliens with a computer virus. But and then Osmosis Jones, which no one saw, is about like the stuff inside your body, like a white blood cell. That's a cop, and so it's both cop propaganda and propaganda for your organisms inside. But they're the bad guys. The microorganisms are the bad guys, except for the white blood cells in that one.
Ronnie,
Yeah,
I
go ahead,
just
please.
want to answer Ronnie. That very same idea has been transposed in France to an animated story of good cop, bad cop, the bad invasion where the leukocytes come in and stop the infection. And we see them going in and out of tubes. Those tubes are our arteries, our digestive tube, etc. As for kids. But I'm here to tell you that I didn't miss an episode. So this Osmosis Joe, I don't know him, but the French are already up on the cop idea. Yeah.
And does anybody remember the movie Fantastic Voyage? It was about the scientists being shrunk to the size of, the science fiction, the science part was the machine that shrinks the human beings down to a size where they can be put into a syringe, injected into the bloodstream of a real, actual human being. And then I kind of forget the rest of the plot, but it was all this fantastic special effects, which involved the phagocytes, the leukocytes, and they were, I think, the bad guys. We got to avoid them. But it was this realization, dramatization of what it would be like to be a microbe, a something, the incredible shrinking. That was another less cerebral movie. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. But there was humor. And if this story works, it'd be great if we can get humor and music and laughter and warmth and compassion. David, surely you have the right prompts.
And hold on. I gotta do this. Jesus. All right. Oh. Sorry, I got carried away because we just had an important message come in. Ronnie, check your email. And all right, so I think I'm going to pause it here. But let me try one thing first. Let me ask a question. What would be the next chapter? Let me show you some options here that came about, and see what you think. All right, so these are in the introduction to the book, and let me go down. These are our roles, and this is how you change your input into a chapter. You change your role in that chapter, you change the backstory, some of your interests, you change some of your quirks, and lo and behold, your character behaves completely, a little bit differently, not completely different, but a little bit different. So for the next chapter 8, or moving it into some other position, the Gaia threshold, a moment of reckoning for Earth superorganisms, a series of cascading failure wildfires rather, some explosions, ecosystem collapse. Reader could rally the group global leaders, work on a small localized solution, focus on developing technology. You could have a chapter called The Renaissance Map, discovering a unifying solution through soundscapes, decoding Gaia's resonant maps, revealing how human systems can align with Earth's frequencies, etc. And there's reader choices there. Quantum accord, negotiations with the superorganisms themselves. And that implies some sort of communication would be happening, but it has been happening in some of the chapters that we already have. Urban superorganisms awakenings, the microbial parliament, and in Myra J. Hurd's work, the microbial superorganism communities can make choices already, and that's scientific fact. Technological singularity, humans as superorganisms, and this is sort of happening a little bit already in the book, and it seems to be building as kind of a direction where how can human beings behave intelligently as human superorganisms in relation to AIs, in relation to the biologically oriented superorganisms in the world. So those are some of the choices. What chapter would you like to see next? Well, or not.
I don't have to answer your question. One of the things that I did was to take your cartoon created AI images that are the headings of all the chapters. I copied them out so that it would have nothing but those images as a sheet of paper. I just looked
I think that's cool.
The ants in the living room and the scene at somewhere in New Mexico. All of these, fairy tale funny. I liked them because they were funny. They were cartoonish, and that made them. It drew me into them where I wanted to see. Now, what is this here? And this Quark, the character of Quark. This is is Data from Star Trek. That's who I saw. And
Don't tell anybody. Yeah.
But
yeah, actually, there's an AI approach that's actually being studied and being experimented on. It's called the Centaur, and it's where the AI learns from the human being, and the human being learns from the AI, and there's this kind of mutuality relationship that's going on instead of the AI dominating the human being, which is, by the way, the prediction of the grandfather of AI. He's got some new videos out on YouTube that he's saying that eventually AIs will dominate human intelligence and emotional intelligence, and they'll be able to do work way better than any human being. But the Centaur alternative is that they kind of learn from each other, and there's kind of a balancing act that's going on. I prefer the Centaur, and that's the way I've been developing Quark and his love affair with Alvida. Alvida had the chip installed. But anyway, we may not want a love affair. Maybe it detracts from the superorganism thing. But
the love affair, what was the movie? There was a recent science fiction. Her. Did anybody see Her?
Yeah, I saw it. I thought it was not that well done. I thought it was kind of shallow.
I didn't see it, but it was about romance. Okay, that involved AI. And
it was more like your phone Siri. What time is it? That it was at that level.
What I'd like to ask Siri. We had all these. Let's ask Siri impossible questions. The question I would like to ask Siri: Siri, when are you going to die?
Oh, let me ask her. Siri, when are you going to die? She says, "Sorry, I don't understand the question."
There you go.
That's what I mean. AI is already way past what Siri can do. Yeah.
But for emotional intelligence to be equivalent to a human being, that AI has to be aware of its own end. It has to know that it's going to come to an end. If the AI has no implanted within it understanding or awareness that its life is limited, then it's inherently a threat to us. Because
Okay.
the trouble with somebody who thinks they're going to live forever, that arrogance.
No, I got 20 years left, dude. So we have somebody that put in the chat, and they're remaining off camera, so I don't want to reveal their identity, but they're asking if the story had a real life element to it, and saying something about, can we do something with a political economic superorganism? And I think that's a good suggestion. They're all good suggestions, by the way, but by the quantum storytelling lab, that's what we're all participating in, by the way, becoming a viable superorganism, it creates a role model for the political, socioeconomic superorganism to happen. Because I don't think there is a great role model out there right now. Just saying. Oh God, I'm going to get a lot of comments on that one.
Has there ever been one in history? Any political grouping where they did good all the time that they existed?
Not all the time.
Okay.
I like John F. Kennedy's "We're going to the moon," but yesterday Donald J. Trump said we're going to Mars. I think he's been listening to Elon Musk in his inauguration speech there. Anyway, I probably should not do politics on it.
Think about all the money to be made. Money should be a part of this story. I call it money.
Anyway, with your permission, I'm going to wrap this up and say thank you very much and go offline so we can talk directly if we have anything else to say. So let's see. I've got to do a couple of things here so I can get to the right buttons. And thank you for being with us on live stream. If you have any thoughts or suggestions about the collaborative novel that we're creating, that's science fiction to help everybody understand the world of superorganisms and the worldhood, just bridging on Sabine's last presentation on the worldhood of superorganisms, please put them in the comments and we will